Happy UC 2020, everyone. My name is Graham Hudgens, and I'm here to tell you about designing enterprise sites. I'll give you a really short version overview of the enterprise sites application, talk about design thinking and how that can help the quality of your enterprise site and be successful with who it's intended for. We'll look at layout editor best practices as of ArcGIS Enterprise 10.8.1, and there will be additional on-demand resources throughout and at the end. So enterprise sites, it lets you make websites and web pages. And the purpose of these is to feature content from your enterprise portal to non-technical users. It's a part of your enterprise portal, and it makes these two item types. It's also worth mentioning that there is a similar functionality within Hub in ArcGIS Online, and the website tech is very similar between the two of them. These sites are useful because it allows a non-technical user access to a subset of information. You can feature prominently, an app or a map. You can also provide additional context, and you can also kind of use it as a home base or jumping off point to, fours of items or thousands of items. You're in the right place to use it if you're using a minimal gallery or a group details page, but need to customize that user experience to make it a little easier to use. If you're trying to share large amounts of items and you need to provide a little context, or even if you're just trying to put a frame around an existing survey or application to give it more context, it's a good app to use in those cases. Enterprise Sites was also designed for the web, so it really well fits into your existing wikis or SharePoints or websites, and it can be a good home-based place for a sort of viewer user that isn't necessarily a power user platform. I'd recommend you not use it if you're trying to tell a really detailed narrative, if you're trying to make a page per data-driven feature, or if you're doing command style displays of information. Those are better accomplished by other apps that are available to you. This was a really fast introduction. Look, I admit it. So if you want a slower, more thorough introduction of enterprise sites, give this talk a look on YouTube. So the first step when designing an enterprise site is to have a plan. And there's a saying among scuba divers of plan the dive and dive the plan. And today I'd like to talk specifically about using design thinking to come up with a good plan. This obviously takes into consideration that there are some projects you should just do and that don't need as much of a plan because the outcomes are known and you just need to execute on it. This is not useful for those sorts of projects. But if you have a project where you're kind of trying to solve a new problem, design thinking is this idea that you'll empathize with the person who's having the problem, you'll clearly define the problem, then you'll come up with ideas about the solutions, you'll prove your best one with a prototype or just an example, and then you'll test it with somebody who's going to use it. There's more resources about this thought framework available on the web. I feature one here below, but give it a look. The front of that process is a problem prioritization exercise. And an easy way to do this is something called a molecule map, where you identify a persona, which is the person who's having the problem itself, and then what we hypothesize to be the solution. So for example, if I have a bunch of people in a remote location, for example, using tablets and phones, and they only use software for essentials, maybe they're having a problem today that enterprise sites can solve, which is critical information is too difficult to access and it's currently being overlooked and it's causing some sort of impact. And so we hypothesize that a site that makes that easier is going to be a solution for them. If you do this sort of exercise where you have people come up with that molecules, you can then have people share them with each other. So in a meeting, for example, you can show everybody the molecules you came up with, talk about them, and then let stakeholders basically decide or dot vote the ones that we feel are the most important to solve. And this is really good because it narrows the group down to a single problem and gives focus to a project. So you have your focused problem now. This is a good moment to test that it actually is a real problem. And if you want to do this digitally, Survey 123 is a great way to ask a bunch of questions that will open-endedly tease out maybe an existing process that isn't working as well as it could be. Here's a bunch of example questions, for example. Another digital way to do it is having a video call. The video part being important because you can see when you ask questions if they like scrunch their face and if they feel overall unhappy or happy. Body language sometimes tells us stuff that words do not. And finally, if you can meet them where they work, that's the best way because you can observe them in their natural habitat. So once you do that and you've validated the problem, you get to switch gears and go into solution mode, which is where I think most human brains are naturally. So this is a really fun collaborative exercise. So come up with what the answer is to that problem together and the details behind it. And the easiest way to do this is to get a bunch of people in a room and just have them, you know, in 5 minutes, just rip out all the things on Post-it notes that it should do. So like, oh, we need a search, we need a map of this data, it needs to be really simple and only feature 4 things, like it's gotta have this. So everybody will kind of dump out all their thoughts into Post-its, and then you can clump them together, which is called affinity mapping, to find the common themes. If you're doing this digitally, try having everybody take notes on like Word or something on their computers, and then when time is up, have everybody paste it into a shared document so you can kind of see all of it, and then as a group, you can create the clumps together. And that's a good way to kind of tease out the literal list of requirements for the solution. If you have more technical users though, option 2 is about actually making a prototype enterprise site. You can build a bad looking version of it and see what it looks like and review that, and then tease out the parts of the site that are common and the ones that are the most important. And if you're somewhere in between, it's sometimes useful to have everyone draw, because the drawings don't have to be good, but then you can dot and vote the drawings themselves to figure out the elements that are the most important. And so out of this, we want to come away with a hypothesis as to what the solution is, and we can go back to those people in step 1 and maybe just show them a picture that's ugly and you know, get their feedback on it, and see if they know what they would do with it, and if they observe the right information in the right places, and that validation that you're on the right track. So now you've done it. You've basically, you know, come up with a lot of problems, narrowed to 1, come up with some solutions and narrowed to 1. Now you can have this kind of milestone meeting where you present that to your sponsors of your project or your leadership, reviewing all those different pieces, and then start to communicate some of the timelines to deliver that. You know, oh, by next week we'll have the first version and it'll have these features. It's good at this point to communicate that the plan will probably change as you get usage, because you'll get more information from those personas, those people who are using it. This is known as double diamond thinking, this design thinking of going wide on problems, picking one and then testing it, and then going wide on solutions, picking one and testing it, is a pretty well-established way to make sure you deliver something that's really valuable. And now you'd be at this right-hand side where you have to iterate on that solution. And this all can happen really quickly depending on the scope of your project. Like these 4 steps might happen in like a 3-hour meeting. It could take a couple weeks. It just depends on how big your project is. So now that we're at a point where our design is picked and our problem's picked, and now we're at the technical level of designing the actual enterprise site. So in this section, we're going to look at 4 different areas. And these are design leaning. So the theme, the home page, and the content, the site's header, and especially the header on mobile and the site on mobile, and then finally accessibility. So the first thing you should do in designing your site is pick a theme. Look for an organization's brand guidelines and seed those primary colors into color generators if you don't have a lot of guidelines. Avoid dramatic fonts, and make sure you test all of the pages of your site, the data set item page, the search page, and any other linked page that you put on your site. If you're looking for a color picker that will pick compliant colors, try colorsafe.co. Do this first so that everything that follows this will take the theme into account, and you can kind of be QAing it continually throughout the design. Next up, we have to design the front of the site, and this is the most important section for anybody who's using it, because you have only a few seconds to convey the meaning of the site. So try to make it personal to that persona, let the photos speak for you, encourage participation, and don't forget to keep it simple. This is a good example of a top of a site from FEMA. It really clearly communicates, has powerful imagery, and gives a purpose immediately. Like, I already know what this site is about. So try to clearly communicate as FEMA has done here. So for the images on the top of your site, I think it'd be better to hear from a designer. So let's hear from Sam.
My name is Sam Hunter. I am a UI designer here at Esri, and I work on the ArcGIS Hub and Enterprise Sites products. My background has evolved from print and graphic design to websites, and now obviously for software interfaces. And that means I've seen a lot of good and not so good designs. So today I'd like to talk to you about one way to spice up your site with the proper use of images. So You might add an image to show literal subject matter, such as a map, city landscape, a team of people, or you might want to apply it as a texture to add visual interest or help draw the eye to important content. Images are a powerful tool if they're used correctly. Whether you're using ArcGIS Hub or Enterprise Sites, there's three main places you might add images. So first we have our row card. So you will be able to apply an image to the background of that. You can use the image card to apply images directly into the body of the content. Or if you use the gallery card, you will either see a default thumbnail or the thumbnail image you supplied for each of the items featured in the cards. So today I'm going to focus on mostly the row card. So let's get to some examples. So here I have my test site, and you can see already I have a problem with my banner image. I have a beautiful photo of a city, but as you can see, I can't read my text. So I want to show you a few of the settings for the row card. So here we can see the city is in the dead center of the photo. So one option we might have is to crop the photo, which is included in the site editor. And this allows me to define where the center of my image is. So I will drag this up so that the city becomes now the bottom of the photo. I'm going to click done. And now you can see the text is in the lighter part of the image, so it's easier to read. Under appearance, you can also change the image focal point. So maybe I wanted to include even more of the city, and you might want to make adjustments using the focal point and the crop method that I just showed you until you get it right. And I also want you to know to beware if you are using a text card on top of a row with a background image, to make sure to resize your window so that when the image responsively resizes, you're still going to have the look you want and be able to read the text. Secondly, a lot of people use images for backgrounds, so maybe some texture, like the example in this template. And maybe you don't have a graphic designer on staff to provide you with the exact image, but if you had a map image available already or you downloaded one from a stock site, you could apply that here. And now I can show you a few row settings for this, for how we might get a similar look to the row above. So that means the first thing we'll do is turn on the image transparency, so you can drag the slider or you can type in a number. So I'm going to go to 80%. And then what we can do is go back up here to background color, which is currently transparent. And now I'm going to select maybe a blue like the one above. And now you can see it is a little bit easier to read the text. There is quite a lot of texture, so I might go even to 90%. And now it's a lot more subtle, but there's still some kind of texture in the background. And you can still read the text. So I think this looks pretty good. And I'm going to move on to my final example, which I wanted to share, which is be careful if you're applying images that already have text on them. So the text is a part of the image. You probably want to avoid that if you're applying it to the background of a row, because depending on the height of the row and the width of the window, you may or may not be able to read that text. So instead, I would suggest if we go back to our layout cards, this is where you would want to use the image card itself. So if we went to upload and we grab our photo, now it's in the body of the content. And when we resize the page, you're going to be able to read the text at all times. So those are a few tips for you, and I hope that helps, and I'll send it back to Graham. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. You know, that texture trick is so cool, and it makes sites look really professional. So once you have your header it's time to move on to the content. And the non-item content on your site will mostly be experienced through the text and words you choose to lay the site out with. So we recommend easy scannable headings and an inventory of the terminology used on the site to make sure that it's a clear hierarchical understanding of how the site's laid out. And it's really good because if different people are logging in with different purposes, they can jump to the section that has the right content for them. If you want to use some of custom HTML or CSS, it's worth noting that Sites is built using Bootstrap 3, and Bootstrap 3 has a variety of UIs and things out of the box that you can take advantage of. There's lots of great examples if you search a search engine for what you're looking for out there that you can use in enterprise sites. Next is your GIS content from your enterprise portal. If you're trying to build a site that's featuring one item, we recommend embedding using the app card or iframe card or map card, as you can provide the context and show the app directly without too much of an impact. If you're showing 4 items, we don't recommend embedding all 4. Maybe pick the favorite one, but then feature the others in a gallery card. Lets people go in full screen into those apps and doesn't make the page load for the site really long. If you have thousands of items, we recommend the category card and the search experience that comes with each enterprise site by default, as this is the optimal way to experience lots of items. So let's switch over and think about mobile and the header of our site and how we can design our content with mobile in mind from the get-go. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
3 things: navigation, don't bury the lead, and be as lightweight as possible. That's it. Keep those 3 things in mind. You'll be successful on both desktop and mobile. All right, first up, navigation. What you see at the top here is the default out-of-the-box header. This is something that anyone that creates a hub site or page are going to get right slapped at the top there. I'm sure you've seen how this is configured many, many times, but just as a quick refresher, go ahead, jump into the layout editor, go to your header, and then all you're doing here is clicking around trying to figure out what the visual is that you're looking for. One important thing to call out while we're here is this short name. As the screen size gets smaller, we will default to using a smaller short name if desired by you. In this case, I have it set to mobile demo, and I'm going to show you here in a second what that will look like. Very important thing to not pass up if you want to consider how things look on the phone. The rest of it though, just went into the menu side of things, set up some links, saved it, and we're off to the races. Going back over to the actual site, how does that look as it degrades? I have 3 tabs open here. This one obviously is on a desktop. This is a larger tablet, and you can see some things are already happening for you. We're using that short name to kind of give you a call out what your site's name is. If I use the full thing, it would run all the way over into the Twitter bird here, and we can't have that. Another thing to look at is this overflow of the menu links. It will overflow into this menu in the order that you supply it. Very critical things, and something that's still very touch friendly to someone on a large tablet in this case. But here's the real kicker: how does this all flow down to the phone? Well, on this one, you can see this is the actual large iPhone 8 Plus. I can go down to a smaller size, but it'll look generally the same. And we took the logo and reflowed it over into a larger mobile navigation bar. This also contains a side panel and your search. But here's the real kicker: it will automatically reflow all those configured menu links using your short name of your site here into an easily and touchable interface so that someone can know how to get around. This is really all important for one simple reason. Mobile users are dropped onto websites willy-nilly. And that's a bad thing because they have no idea where they are, how to get around, what to do. So ensuring that you have a mobile first viewpoint of your navigation of your site right from the beginning is critical to making them feel at home and making them want to continue to explore the content that you're giving them. All right, that's easy to do. No HTML, CSS required. How to build an easy to configure header navigation system. So we're going to go back and return to the last 2 concepts we have here: not burying the lead and being as lightweight as possible. And I'm going to kind of walk through a demo of how to do both of those things a little bit at the same time with the rest of this site that you see on the page. But just to touch on those generally, here I have a desktop viewpoint, and I have a lot of calls to action here. About Hub, Hub GeoNet, site headers, more useful links. Go to the site, scan that QR code, which, by the way, if you want to, go ahead and hold your phone up, scan this, and you can go play around with the site live as we're talking through it. But, hey, I just don't have this much room on a phone. And it would require someone on the phone to scroll down some material amount of space in order to even begin to see what's needed from them or what you're trying to get out of them. And we gotta make sure we counteract that as much as possible. It's always really important to get your primary thing that you want to have happen on your site at the top of the page. The last point we're going to talk through in tandem is being as lightweight as possible. And that really centers around the page load performance of your site on a phone. But here's a general rule of thumb. Applications are heavy. Mobile browsers aren't. They don't have the tools and equipment in order to handle very heavyweight applications. So try and keep it less than 5 per page. If you really want to be an all-star, keep it to 1 or 2 embedded applications if possible, and less than 3 to 4 images. Social media feeds and videos count too. Don't forget those. We do a lot in Hub on your behalf to lazy load applications. That just means that they're not being called to present themselves until it's time. But even then, it can be very difficult to load a 100+ megabyte application when most mobile web browsers consider a web page that's over 3 megabytes to be pretty big. So do as much as possible using the tools we're about to walk through to counteract that and ensure everyone has a fabulous experience with your site. All right, so let's jump into the layout editor. And in here, we're going to explore just 3 concepts. One is hidden rows. The other is hiding application embeds. And the last is using the iframe card to implement a mobile URL override. We're going to use Census 2020 as an example. They do a really fabulous job with how they present their dashboards on their site. I've just grabbed them from the web and embedded them here. So let's just get started. So I'm going to scroll down and we're just going to hide some stuff. And really, why is this important? Most applications just weren't designed with the phone in mind. You have desktop-centric applications intending to use 16 gigabytes of RAM to run, now being run on a phone which has 2 gigabytes, and it's struggling. So using CSS classes on a row can be a very powerful way of saying, hey, at a smaller size, go away, don't load. And you'll see that's pretty easy to do. I know what I have here is a code snippet, essentially, and that can be very frightening to a lot of you. But just know that there are 4 sizes here. There's hidden-XS, small, very small phone, SM, smaller tablet, MD, larger tablet, smaller desktop, and large, desktop, right? And you can use these classes by just going to a row, opening up inside appearance, and adding them. Remember, no commas, just a space if you want to add it on multiple sizes. And what that does is it takes a row that looks something like this, which is very desktop oriented. Here I have the Census 2020 COVID-19 impact with a dashboard right next to an entire Twitter thread. For a mobile user, this is a super hostile place to scroll through, and just the fact of the matter is the dashboard isn't responsive. So I went ahead and I applied these classes to say, hey, anything less than a very small desktop, so big tablet, big phone, small phone, don't show this. And what that looks like is, if we go back to our phone over here, is you're going to find it doesn't display. As a matter of fact, it goes ahead and scrolls down into a mobile first version that Census built in the first place. And that is directly below using the next thing, which is the iframe card. iframe card has this toggle you can switch on called the mobile URL override. This will say, hey, below the small level, show this URL instead of the other one. And as you can see, in the preview here in the layout editor, it's the same application as above. But when we scrolled down on the phone earlier, it was this smaller variant. And this is something that they built rather cheaply, just meaning in the sense that it didn't take them much time to stand up, and has a huge impact on how a mobile user experiences it. All right, so let's jump back in. Another thing I want to show you is how to actually target specific application embeds. You're going to see this functionality across quite a few of our layout cards, but I'm going to use the app card to highlight it specifically. And here I have a collection story map embedded using the app card. It was pretty easy to find. I just went in, picked it out of the public, and here I have it. I have a scroll turned off just for the sake of this demo, but normally scroll isn't automatically enabled. Here in options, I'm going to see something called hide on mobile. And it does a very similar thing to hiding things on a row, but it essentially just says, hey, if I'm on and the screen size is small, go away, don't load, do not display. And this can be a very powerful component to use, as we're going to see a little later on, to ensure that a mobile user, as they're scrolling through, has a positive experience. It prevents a bad feedback loop that they may be getting into. And just to prove that I'm not lying and this works, we can go back to the phone. And here we have our mobile first version of the dashboard. And I continue to scroll back down, and here we go. Wow, the embed disappeared on mobile. So it's actually a pretty easy, just turn it on to make sure things don't display when you don't want them to display. So we hinted at it there, get that bad feedback loop of scrolling on a mobile device. And what I mean by that is, imagine, I'm just going to pick on story maps here because it's an easy thing to set up that has a long scrolling experience, but they're actually do a fabulous mobile first experience when it's something that's straight out of the box. But it's really easy to get into a feedback loop of a forever scroll, and it is the bane of every mobile user's experience. So imagine my cursor is my thumb, and I could scroll up here, but I don't know of a lot of people that hold their phone where their thumb is up here. Most of the time it's actually down here. So you're going to see a lot of people get into this mode where I'm scrolling right now, and they don't feel like anything's happening. And things are just changing, they can't get out of it. And so what they end up having to do is they have to adjust and go up here and kind of like shoot the phone down. And here we have an even worse experience where the embed is so long that all that did was shoot them into a spot that they can't do anything. No matter where I am on this scroll right now, I can't get out of it. I have to continually scroll either all the way back up or all the way down, and this is a long story map in order to leave. So that I've essentially been trapped here, and it's a really big time bummer experience. And this is what we call the forever scroll of doom on a phone, and it happens in maps too, just so you know. Instead of scrolling down forever, I'll essentially be zooming in and out really quickly. So just keep this in mind, and by breaking content up and hiding rows, you can actually get around this in a certain way that's quite powerful by using hidden classes to show things. And I know it's kind of counterintuitive. Well, I have a hidden class, that means hide. But if you're intelligent about how you use your hidden class, you can actually hide everything on a large screen so that it shows on a small screen. And here we have an example of that. I have essentially a row that we're viewing right now that has the following classes applied to it. So it's being hidden on large screens, medium-sized screens, and smaller tablets, but on a phone, it actually displays this gallery card. And this is a really positive thing because now a mobile user can make the choice to go experience something, and when we open by using the app page site capability, it's a more immersive experience, and it's a directional scroll that they're intuitively familiar with. And there's a definitive end, and it's not something that's interrupting their content. And being a mobile user, they're really familiar with going back and forward using the bottom controls on the browser, so they can just get back to where they were pretty easily. And let's say by chance they're not those people that use the out-of-the-box browser forward, browser back thing that's easily accessible by a thumb click, or a thumb selection, on a phone. Well, already our out-of-the-box header system is paying off for us. They can immediately go and say, hey, I want to go somewhere else. Let me look at the menu, or intuitively click that top icon to go back home. And here we are at home, and you can see something on the screen, the Howdy Neighbor call out, that is not over here. And what I did was that same exact implementation for showing rows by hidden values I'm using here on the phone to ensure that my call out is presented at the top. I'm ensuring that the mobile phone has a primary lead directly at the top. Really easy implementation that you can take and implement in different ways. And after all is said and done, and I'm scrolling all the way down, and you've done all this stuff, I just really want to say thank you for taking some time to consider mobile browsers.
Thanks, Brian. Those are some really good tips, aren't they? So our last section is to do with accessibility, and this is very similar to mobile in that you need to consider it as you design your site throughout. We have this blog as a resource of some of the tips to take into account, but I thought it'd be really good to hear from our accessibility expert on the enterprise sites team, Clara. So Clara, why don't you take it away?
Hello, my name is Clara Schmidt, and I'm UI UX designer on ArcGIS Hub and ArcGIS Enterprise Sites. And today I will be taking you through a quick lesson on improving web accessibility on your sites. Web accessibility is a particular passion of mine, and it no longer pertains to just websites. So if you are thinking that accessibility only pertains to external facing sites, that would be inaccurate. I will be referencing WCAG 2.1 AA principles in some of my slides. WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, but they are generally applicable to many types of digital content, including documents, intranet, social media, and even project management software. Here is a site that I have set up for this demo. This is a fake intranet site with a human resources page that contains lots of links. Not a lot of content and lots of links. This will become important in a minute on why this is more difficult for a non-sighted user to navigate. I will be interacting with this site from the perspective of a non-sighted user who is using a screen reader. For my demo, I will be using VoiceOver, which is an OS X screen reader. It's important to have good page structure and headings when you're laying out the sites and pages within your application, because not everyone navigates the page top to bottom. As a sighted user, I can scan the page vertically, read the headings, I see chunks of content. Often we have solid background colors on rows with a heading, sometimes pictures. Proximity makes relationships. We can see clusters of information, so we're like, this has the same context, so I understand that these items belong to the heading above them, or they all look kind of the same, so they must be a related subset. And this is not the case if you are non-sighted and navigating by your screen reader, because pretty much everything is the same level, and you might not want to navigate through every single link on the page in order to get to a link that, as you discover, is 70% of the way down. So if I were a non-sighted user using a screen reader, I might use keyboard shortcuts built into my screen reader to make it easier for me to navigate through a page like this. I might use the headings menu or the links menu. And this is why you want to avoid using headings to make your text larger, as it would affect the content structure. You can imagine that if you have a sentence that is not actually a heading, but you use the text card and you use a heading just to make it a bigger font size, it's going to show up in this headings list. And now I have to listen to a full sentence that is not actually a heading in order to just try to guess what where the information I'm looking for might be on the page. You also want to use concise descriptive headings, because this also helps somebody just kind of make a quick guess at where they think something might be. For this HR page, let's say I'm looking for the employee handbook. Given that I have this list of headings, I might try under needs help, maybe under tools, maybe under templates and forms. There are a couple options, but I can navigate quickly between those sections based on those headings. One other structural thing to keep in mind is tables should have a table header, so that those using assistive technologies can hear the structure of the table. Again, a table is very visual in the sense that there is a column header, and as a sighted user, I can look straight down vertically to understand that the next 4 table data cells that contain links are referencing the title. They're all title links. But if I'm using assistive technology, I might be moving horizontal. So I'll hear title, format, travel expense request, XLS, and in between, I'm also hearing the table structure. So one of the reasons that you include the table header is so that as you navigate, you hear title, travel expense request, format, XLS, as you go through each row. So also equally as important is link context. Again, this is because you can open up a quick menu of links to get through your whole page. Link text should not be vague, it should not be repetitive, and ideally it's not even dependent on content for context. If you're skimming down this menu link that I have a screenshot from VoiceOver, most of these will probably make sense. You probably have some inkling of where this link will take you until we get down to learn more. Do you remember where learn more? Like, what was the context of learn more when you saw this page last? And you even got to see the page. If I was landing on this page first time and I had never navigated it, it's just going to be very generic. I don't know what the context is. I wouldn't know until I went to that link and read the context around it. That it would be more clear if you write what it is in the link, like learn more about COVID resources. If that's too long, just COVID resources. Like, you get a faster sense right away of what that link should be and where it's going to take you. Likewise, links should not trigger unexpected content changes. So if your link opens in a new tab, warn users. If the link is a PDF, say so. You just want to manage their expectations of what is going to happen after they click that link. I'm going to jump over to my demo site that I created right now, and we'll look at how we can improve a couple additional aspects of this site. So the learn more was actually within this COVID section. Like I said, you can improve the text here. So this learn more could just say COVID resources. Alternatively, if there is a reason that you need something a little bit more generic, there's some pattern you're following, a thing that you can do, it involves just a little code, but it's not a lot, is that if you come in, you can put an ID on your H2. Can be anything, it's just got to be unique. I'll call it call to action. And then down here on your link, you want to add an ARIA labeled by class. Well, this is not a class, role labeled by. And then you want to put the same thing that you put in the ID, so call to action. And what this will do is create a relationship between this button and this text, so that when I'm on the button, I actually hear the header again. Another thing that's good to do is that when you insert the button, which happens, I inserted the button by using our insert code snippet block here for button, but when you add it to the page, you will get a div wrapped around this button and this is a link that looks like a button, but you'll get a div wrapped around this link. You can improve programmatic relationships by deleting the div. So it would have looked something like this and putting a p tag instead. That's a paragraph tag. So you're saying, hey, both paragraphs under this header belong to the header. So we'll close out of this one. The other thing which I was mentioning before, if you are using images as links, while there is caption text here, you're probably better off describing where the link is going to take you than what is in the image. So I might put employee handbook here, even though it will be duplicative. I'll hear it twice when I'm navigating by screen reader, but it's better sometimes than just relying on the image and leaving the images marked decorative, because if you don't put alt text, it'll indicate a decorative image, and if you put something like book, it doesn't offer a lot of value. And also, if you have no link text, you'll hear the URL. And if this were a real live intranet portal, we know that a lot of internal links are not the most user readable, so we probably wouldn't want it to default to the link. The other thing I might do is, if this is a PDF, I'll cite that it's a PDF and that it opens in a new tab. You can control whether it's going to open a new tab or same tab here. Same tab is the recommended experience because it is the least disorienting. But if you do need to open in a new tab, just say so in as much as you can. Moving down, we have this benefits section. So the benefits, again, there's two ways to handle the opens in new tab On links, you can write it straight up in the link text, but it does make slightly long links. If you want another way to do it, but again, just a little bit of code, you're going to hop into your link, and you can set whether you want the link to open in a new tab or not through our WYSIWYG control up here. But you find the one that has target blank because that indicates opens in new link, and then you can add an ARIA label, and this is different than ARIA labeled by because you can write whatever you want in here in this text area, but I recommend opens in new tab. And this text will only be available to the person that is navigating by a screen reader. A sighted user is not going to see that text. So we'll collapse that. Right here you can see my table has a table header cell. This is one of our image cards. This is the wide card from here. I did remove the caption off of the image, and I set the image to decorative because the image is redundant compared to the title here. This information right here, with my typo, get more info, is useless, so we're not gonna want this anyway, so I'm gonna remove the link off, copy the link from here, and then just delete this whole element because the link is actually more valuable on the actual heading where it gives a lot more context. Oops, added a typo. So then I'll save this page, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up VoiceOver and give you a quick look at what navigating a screen reader is. We'll assume my task is that I want to find the employee handbook, but I'm not going to listen to all of the links. I'm just going to try to navigate through a couple heading sections and bounce around using VoiceOver's shortcuts. So I will try not to talk as much over VoiceOver because it's kind of hard to hear me.
Welcome to Mac OS. VoiceOver is on. System preferences. Chrome. Designing for accessibility. Google Chrome new tab. Back for review site. Designing for accessibility. Web content. You are currently banner. Chrome has navigation. List one night menu button. End of list. List 4 items. Search. New. Clara. End of list. End of navigation. Headings menu. Heading level 1. Link. Organization name, heading level 1. Human resources, heading level 2. Important info regarding COVID, heading level 2, 2 items. Need help, heading level 2. Benefits, heading level 2. Benefits, link, opens in a new tab. Chrome has new window. You are in link, opens in a new tab. Benefit handbook, PDF. Out of link, opens in a new tab. Headings menu. Heading level 1, heading level 1, heading level 2, 2 items. Heading level 2, 2, here are some employee resource quick links to get you link, comma, link, image, employee handbook, PDF, opens in a new tab. Chrome has new window. Headings menu, form controls menu, no items in, tables, landmarks menu, articles menu. UARC, links menu. Link, skip navigation, link, home, link. Link. Learn more. Important info regarding COVID-19.
So right there you can see that by me associating that button with the ARIA labeled by with the header above, I gave that button a lot more context. And that ends my short demo of VoiceOver and why it's important to give your page good structure, clear links, clear headings, and overall make it a little bit easier for people to navigate in unconventional manners. Thank you.
Thanks, Clara. If you want a more thorough review of layout cards, give deep customization of hub and enterprise sites a look on YouTube. Now we're at the end here, about to take your questions, some resources for you. If you're looking for examples, check out ArcGIS online on the gallery on hub.arcgis.com. If you're looking for more videos, we have a YouTube playlist with hub and enterprise sites talks on it. There's always documentation available to you in the enterprise sites overview, in the installed and online help, and please give us feedback. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Philip, and we're going to take your questions.